Early evening on Tuesday, Boris Johnson released a statement.
Today I've received a fixed penalty notice from the Metropolitan Police relating to an event in Downing Street on the 19th of June 2020. And let me say immediately that I've paid the fine and I once again offer a full apology.
4 months ago, on the 8th of December, Boris Johnson had also addressed the issue of lockdown parties in Downing Street.
I can understand how infuriating it must be to think that the people who have been setting the rules have not been following the rules.
But one of the people who was setting the rules and not following them was the Prime Minister. The police say they believe Mr Johnson, his wife Carrie Symonds and Chancellor Rishi Sunak all broke the law. All three would be fined. And Downing Street shared a police statement issued to Mr Johnson in which he's told on the 19th of June 2020 at the Cabinet Room, 10 Downing Street, between 1400 and 1500, you participated in a gathering of 2 or more people indoors. This was a birthday gathering reported by The Times and then by ITV News. ITV told us the Prime Minister received cake whilst his wife led a staff in a course of happy birthday, and that those assembled are understood to have eaten picnic food from M&S. The Mirror has since reported the police have a bombshell picture which shows Boris Johnson holding a can of beer at a lockdown birthday party. The police haven't confirmed that. But several days before this gathering, we know Mr Johnson urged people to show restraint and respect the rules. But to his supporters, this rule-breaking gathering was not his fault. In January, the Minister Conor Burns told Channel 4 it was not a premeditated, organised party. He was, in a sense, ambushed with a cake. Cake ambush or otherwise, the police believe Boris Johnson broke the law, to which this is Mr Johnson's response.
In all frankness, at that time, it did not occur to me that this might have been a breach of the rules. But of course, the police have found otherwise, and I fully respect the outcome of their investigation.
That may be, but while Mr Johnson says he's always sought to tell the truth, the police's conclusion means that he repeatedly made false statements about these lockdown parties. For example, just after the story broke, the Prime Minister said this.
All guidance was followed completely during number 10.
That wasn't true, nor was it true the next day when the Prime Minister's spokesperson said all COVID rules have been followed at all times. Nor was it true when Mr Johnson said this on the 7th of December.
The guidelines were followed at all times.
The guidelines weren't followed at all times. And in that same interview, Mr Johnson was asked if he was sure.
Did you investigate that yourself? Have you satisfied yourself that that is the case?
I have satisfied myself that the guidelines were followed at all times.
Mr Johnson was satisfied, but a leaked video showed that back in late 2020, his colleagues were practising how to answer questions about a party that had recently happened.
I apologise for the impression that has been given that staff in Downing Street take this less than seriously. I'm sickened myself and furious about that.
Mr Johnson was furious about the impression that staff were not taking the issue of lockdown gatherings seriously, but the police have now concluded that he and his Chancellor attended one, despite this assurance from Rishi Sunak.
No, Mr Speaker, I did not attend any parties.
And now that the police have decided that he did attend a gathering, the opposition has seen enough. Labour's leader, Sir Keir Starmer, tweeted, Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak have broken the law and repeatedly lied to the British public. They must both resign. Now, the Prime Minister denies lying. And if that's Labour's criticism, then this is the Liberal Democrats.
We will see if Conservative MPs really believe that having a Prime Minister who breaks the law, having a Chancellor Exchequer who breaks the law, is acceptable.
So far, it is acceptable. There's no evidence of a move against Boris Johnson. Even Sir Roger Gale, who called for him to go back in January, now tells ITV we're in the middle of an international crisis. Now is absolutely not the time to destabilise the government. But a Prime Minister breaking the law inevitably destabilises to some degree, especially given the circumstances, because it was Boris Johnson who ordered 3 lockdowns in England. At other times, strict rules remained in place, and there were many appeals such as this.
Our plan does rely on all of us continuing to make sacrifices to protect those we love. So please continue to follow the rules.
Loved ones, though, were lost. COVID's death toll in the UK by the end of 2020 was more than 76,000. By the end of 2021, it was nearly 150,000. And some of those who lost loved ones have reacted to these fines. One campaign group tweeted, After everything, it's still unbelievably painful that Boris Johnson was partying and breaking his own lockdown rules while we were unable to be at loved ones' sides in their dying moments or in miserable funerals with only a handful of people. We were following the rules. They were. And we now know that the Prime Minister wasn't. Not just that, he was telling Parliament something different, which brings us to the ministerial code. It reads, ministers who knowingly mislead Parliament will be expected to offer their resignation. If Boris Johnson knew either he or someone else had broken the rules, this appears clear-cut. But we already know Number 10's defence on this. Back in March, a spokesperson said at all times he set out his understanding of events. And that defence has been echoed by the Prime Minister on Tuesday and by the Tory MP, Michael Fabricant.
When he went to the House and said, I don't think I was breaking any law, I don't think he did think he was breaking any law.
This in turn would mean the Prime Minister didn't fully understand the laws that he was setting, as well as not knowing how others were breaking the law inside Number 10 and Whitehall. Because remember, this isn't just about one event. The police are investigating 12 of them. They intend to issue at least 50 fines. And there's also the investigation by the civil servant Sue Gray. Her initial findings already note failures of leadership and judgment by different parts of Number 10 and the Cabinet Office at different times. And even without Sue Gray's report, we know the police believe the UK has a law-breaking leader. And a question asked by Boris Johnson's predecessor, Theresa May, back in January, remains relevant.
Either my right honourable friend had not read the rules, or didn't understand what they meant, and others around him, or they didn't think the rules applied to Number 10. Which was it?
While following news of his fine, Mr Johnson says he didn't know he was breaking the rules. And he added this.
I understand the anger that many will feel that I myself fell short when it came to observing the very rules which the government I lead had introduced to protect the public.
And so a Prime Minister who police believe broke the law, who offered assurances that have turned out not to be true, is now asking his country and his party to trust him to continue as their leader.